Today on Legally Yes, Jada Pinkett-Smith and Will Smith's non-prenup. And did Britney Spears have to ask Justin Timberlake permission to reveal their personal stories? Plus, a rapper arrested in the DR and why a teen mom's sister can't adopt her child. We've got that plus so much more in today's Legally Yes. Hey everyone, and welcome to Legally Yes. I'm Christina. That's, of course, Neama Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Hi, Neama. How are you?
Doing great, Christina. How about you?
Good. We have a lot of really big stories this week that have gotten a lot of people talking. Kicking it off with Jada Pinkett-Smith. So she revealed that she and Will Smith decided not to sign a prenup when they wed back in 1997 because they never saw divorce as an option. So she said that the now estranged couple told each other ahead of their wedding that and their reportedly net worth is $50 million, and that they, like I said, they didn't see divorce as an option, but they have been separated for about 7 years at this point. So why do we think that they didn't sign a prenup agreement at this time? And if you're separated for 7 years, why not just split up? Are you trying to protect your assets?
Potentially, yes. They've decided to live separately, but legally, that has no bearing on, either child support, spousal support, or dividing the marital property here in California. So it doesn't have any legal effect, although practically speaking, they're living completely apart in separate lives.
Right. So even if she's living in a different household, maybe not having her children 100% of times, if you're not filing that legal paperwork, it's up to the couple to decide what they're going to do with their marriage and visitation rights and things like that.
Exactly. So if you don't file for a divorce, none of those legal proceedings start. There's no filing, there's no disclosures, there's no separation. Really the only practical effect is, either Jada or Will, they can't remarry. That would be bigamy. But other than that, they're free to choose to live their lives however they want.
I mean, do you advise your clients, I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but do you advise your clients when they have that type of wealth to always get a prenup? It makes sense.
I think it is wise to get a prenuptial agreement. I have to confess, Christina, I don't have one myself. I'm one of those, doctors that smoke cigarettes, but every lawyer will advise their client, especially those that are well off, to get a prenuptial agreement. And the reason is this: we've seen it here every week. Divorces can get nasty. There's a very high divorce rate, particularly here in California where I live, and particularly amongst celebrities. So a prenup never goes into effect unless you decide to get separated. So it's much better to work out your differences while you're still in love and you have a good relationship than after things go south.
All right, moving on over to Britney Spears. This had my jaw on the floor. So she opened up about her relationship with Justin Timberlake in her upcoming book. And she also revealed that she did have an abortion during her relationship with Justin. So in her upcoming memoir, The Woman in Me, she revealed that she became pregnant while she was dating Justin in the early 2000s. She said that Justin definitely wasn't happy about the pregnancy. She added, he said we weren't ready to have a baby in our lives, that we were way too young. And she went on to say that she made the choice to terminate the pregnancy because Justin wasn't ready to be a father. She said, I'm sure people will hate me for this, but I agreed not to have the baby. I don't know if that was the right decision. If it had been left up to me alone, I never would have done it. And yet Justin was so sure that he didn't want to be a father. So this is a pretty huge bombshell revelation. So when you're writing these memoirs and things like that, do you ever have to reach out and get permission to write something about this, especially something that is so personal?
Christina, you don't. And really, bombshell is right. I mean, this is something that had everyone's jaw on the floor. But, legally speaking, Britney Spears doesn't have to ask for Justin Timberlake's permission to talk about her body and her pregnancy. Now, of course, if they have some sort of agreement where they decided not to do so, then Britney Spears could be in breach of that agreement with Justin. But absent an agreement, parties are generally free to talk about whatever they want, whenever they want.
This brings up the topic of, obviously, of abortion. And she said if it was up to her, she would have kept the pregnancy. He was really adamant about doing it. Eventually, at the end of the day, they both agreed to do this. But what if the father wants the abortion, the mother doesn't? Obviously, your body, your choice. But, does that ever get into legal circumstances or anything like that?
It can, but the law is pretty clear. Like you said, Christina, your body, your choice. It is the woman's right to choose. And obviously, here in a state like California, abortion is legal. It was certainly legal, when Britney and Justin conceived that baby together. So, regardless of where you are, if you're in a state where abortion is still legal, it is absolutely the woman's choice whether she wants to terminate that pregnancy. And there's nothing that the man can do to either prevent her from doing so or to force her to do so.
Something tells me we're going to be talking a lot about this book next week once it's officially hit shelves, because she dives into her conservatorship. And I think that obviously we'll have a lot to talk about. So stay tuned for that one. But moving on over to Tyga, we've talked about this custody battle for quite some time, but he actually made his move in his ongoing legal battle with Blac Chyna by filing for sole custody of their 11-year-old son. He is seeking full physical and legal custody of their child, whom they welcomed back in 2012. And he is also asked that Chyna be given reasonable visitation in addition to maintaining their current holiday schedule. He requested that she receive written permission to take their son out of state. She previously filed a petition to terminate parental relationship, asking for joint custody of their son. This was back in August. He cares for their child on more than half of the days in a typical week. So why, after all of these years, why would somebody file for sole custody like this?
I think this is a response to Blac Chyna's filing. I think effectively, Tyga did have more or less sole legal custody. He had custody of the child, during the week. I believe it was almost every day of the week, except for the weekends. Occasionally, Blac Chyna would have some visitation rights. I don't think a judge is going to grant sole legal custody. And we've talked about that before. That's decision making over the child. And we know that Blac Chyna, for instance, just had a birthday party for him. And, I think courts are generally reluctant to, terminate, a parent's right to make legal decisions for their child, medical decisions, and so forth. And, and to the extent that Tyga's asking for sole legal custody plus visitation, and that's effectively what they have right now. So I would expect the judge, after more than 10 years now, kind of keep things intact. There's no reason to change the circumstances. Oftentimes, a party will come in and ask a court to change things because of, a change in one of the parent's circumstances. But essentially, the parties have been in the same position for the past 11 years. It seems to be working out. And, I don't think any judge is going to really partake in this sort of bickering and nastiness between Tyga and Blac Chyna.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you want to remember that there is a 12-year-old child involved. So I'm sure, keeping things as normal as they possibly can and not rocking the boat is probably in the best interest of the child. All right,
Exactly.
Moving on over to rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine. He was arrested in the Dominican Republic after being accused of assaulting 2 music producers. So he arrived at a studio last week with 5 other men. So this was according to witnesses who spoke with a Dominican newspaper. So the group entered the studio and attacked 2 producers. Surveillance video captured the crew leaving on foot. Then he attempted to book a charter flight out of the country after the attack. However, the charter company checked with police and learned there was a warrant for his arrest. So how long could he be detained in the Dominican Republic now that he's there? He can't leave.
Well, Tekashi 6ix9ine can be detained for months, maybe even years. And this is why, whenever you're looking at whether someone should be detained, you look at 2 factors: risk of flight and danger to the community. And here you have someone who tried to flee when he had a warrant. So, in every jurisdiction, there's going to be an instruction that jurors are going to be able to hear and judges can consider as well. Flight is consciousness of guilt. And here you have someone, Tekashi 6ix9ine, with some pretty significant criminal history, which is well documented. So given that we're dealing with an assault, given that he tried to leave because of some of his past criminal history and really no clear ties, at least to the Dominican Republic, I think he's going to be there for quite some time until this gets resolved.
Interesting. So, and like you said, how serious, this is pretty serious then. If you try to flee, basically, like you said, that's kind of an admission of guilt. So he could potentially spend a long amount of time, maybe even in jail there too.
Potentially, yeah. So when you're dealing with assaults, at least here in the States, there's 2 really types of assaults. There's misdemeanor assault and there's felony. And it really depends on, was there a weapon involved? Was there serious bodily injury? So once we have more information about, the nature of this assault, the extent to which weapons were used and so forth, we'll be able to have a better sense of how much time Tekashi 6ix9ine may do in the Dominican Republic.
Right. Could his lawyers be like working overtime at this time and try to move this case over to the United States, or is this where it's going to stay?
It's probably going to stay there in the Dominican Republic. It's a Dominican case. The alleged assault happened there. The victims are there. The witnesses are there. The video is there. So this should remain a Dominican case. It's not something that's going to be handled here in the States.
Well, moving on to Teen Mom star Briana DeJesus, she revealed that she wanted her sister, Britney, to adopt her 6-year-old daughter, Stella, because Stella's father is absent. So Britney, who agreed to adopt Stella when her sister asked, explained that because Stella and Nova, Briana's eldest daughter, don't have the same dad, if God forbid something were to happen to my sister, there's a possibility that they would be separated. So while Britney was on board with the plan, Florida law provided some obstacles. Briana's attorney explained to her earlier in the season that parental rights could be terminated through second parent adoption when another family member adopts the child, but noted that the courts have put the brakes on that, meaning it was not a viable option for Briana at that time. So what exactly are those Florida laws that would prevent this from happening?
So in most states, when there's an adoption, the biological parental rights are terminated. Now, there's been a shift away from that. An example I like to give is, let's say parents get separated, right? Mom and dad get separated, mom remarries, and now there's a stepdad involved. The stepdad may want to adopt the child and give her the same inheritance rights, for instance, that a biological child would have. So in that situation, when there's a third parent adoption, it doesn't necessarily terminate the rights of the biological father, even though the father may no longer be in the picture. So that termination has to happen first, before there's any kind of severance of the parental rights.
So that's something that the father would have to agree to then. He would have to give up his, like you said, give up his parental rights for this woman to legally adopt her sister's child.
Exactly. So, the father can voluntarily relinquish his parental rights, or there can be a court proceeding where a judge does that. Now, just because someone isn't really involved in their child's life doesn't necessarily mean that the parental rights are going to be terminated. That parent may still have to pay child support, for instance, even though if he doesn't want visitation. So it's not something that happens automatically. Being a absentee father isn't enough to terminate. So we'll see what a judge does there.
Right. So really the only viable option right now is to kind of wait and see what a judge rules if they decide to move forward with this. Exactly.
And, there can be someone else that adopts the child, but doesn't necessarily mean that the father is going to be iced out. He can potentially get back involved if he makes a decision to do so later.
A lot of different topics this week, Neama, and thank you so much for breaking them all down as always.
Thanks, Christina, and I'll see you next week.
See you next week. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.